Welcome to the Bold Life Movement podcast. I'm your host, Kimberly Rich, and each week I bring you inspiring stories from real people to help you live a more passionate and intentional life. You'll learn how to up-level in everything from relationships, entrepreneurship and leadership, to spirituality, sexuality, and yes, even money. If you're interested in raising your game to be a better business owner, a better lover, and a happier, more fulfilled human, then you're in the right place. No more living on autopilot. You are just an episode away from a bolder, better, more fulfilling life. Welcome back to Season 2, Episode 53 of the Bold Life Movement Podcast. Today's episode with former guest Nat Eliason is super fun, and if you're a regular listener, somewhat different than what you might be used to. You may remember Nat from Season 1 when I brought him on for a back-to-back interview series. He is such a brave, out-of-the-box thinker, and that's exactly why I brought him back on for round 3 to talk about his new book entitled Come Again, What Men Need to Know About Amazing Sex. This interview is one of my favorite episodes to date because it's one of the most candid chats that I've had with any of my guests. And I feel like it's such a universal topic that anyone with a libido and a pulse can find something new or interesting to take away from it. Plus, you can tell by watching the interview over on YouTube just how much fun we're having. So I hope that translates and you do too. In today's episode, I grill Nat about some of the catalysts for writing such a taboo book. What are some of the takeaways that men can learn about lasting longer in bed, among many others from his new book? Why men aren't actively talking about this topic on their own? And loads more. There are a lot of interesting nuggets, so be sure to catch the show notes and watch the interview over at theboldlifemovement.com/053. And please welcome the one and only Nat Eliason. All right, Nat, welcome back to the Bold Life Movement. I'm super excited to catch up with you. Last time we spoke, you were in the writing process for your now launched book, Come Again, What Men Should Know About Amazing Sex. So I'm looking forward to sharing this with the audience and hearing what you've been up to since then.
Yeah, no, it's great to be back. Let's dive right in.
Yeah, so give us a brief synopsis of why you wrote the book and what a general, the general topic and what people can get from it.
Yeah, well, I kind of stumbled into writing about this area through my blog because a mutual friend of ours actually pushed me to write an article for men about lasting longer in bed. So it was something that I had worked on in the past, something that he was working on, and there was just not good content out there about it, and pretty much about anything related to improving sex for men or things that guys are curious about. Our suspicion was that it was this issue where most people were too embarrassed to write about it, especially people who, could do it well. And then so the people who were willing to write about it, the like Cosmos of the world and stuff, just didn't deliver anything that valuable. So we said, okay, screw it. We'll just try writing this. Wrote the article, ended up sort of going viral on Reddit and other places and driving really huge amount of kind of continuous traffic to my site. So I wrote a few others related to like non-ejaculatory orgasms and Kegel exercises and timing your testosterone. And it was a very consistent, strong interest from people that, hey, people aren't writing about sex in this sort of no bullshit, no ego way for guys. And it was also, pretty clear from that there wasn't a great book out there that was just, if you're a guy and you're really trying to get to the top, like 80, 90%, like everything that you should know about being good in bed and being comfortable around sex, this is the book. And so, yeah, I started doing research based on what was out there already, what was doing well with the audience. And last time we talked, I was working on that, and now it's been out for about a month now, and the reception has been really, really good. And it's been fun to have that out in the world.
So what is some of the feedback that you've gotten, both good and bad, if you're willing to share?
No, I think the good feedback is that there are other books out there that have good info in them, but it requires you to get through usually this horrible personality where the author is bragging about, all the women he slept with and what a sex god he is and all of this stuff. That it just kind of like pains you to read it. And even if there's good information, you feel dirty halfway through and you have to go take a bath. So Yeah, that was the one thing that I was really happy to hear was that people felt like it was delivering all the information they're really curious about without being super kind of like nasty ego douchey sounding. So just kind
Yeah.
of fun, light, very conversational, as if we're having drinks at the bar and talking, and then not spending a ton of time on super fringe and stuff. Just like really focusing on the main things they should know. So really good communication around sex, really good like fingering, oral. Being more vocal, all of the like basic positional stuff, and then some of the fun things too, like the lasting longer, obviously helping women orgasm, things around like multiple orgasms for men and non-ejaculatory orgasms, and like the different ways they can do that, and then also some of the kink BDSM stuff that people are in many cases interested in exploring to some degree,
Yeah.
but because of the taboo around it, they maybe don't want to bring it up with their partner, or they've been kind of like repressing some of those interests in the past. So trying to approach that with also a very just conversational light tone, despite it being something people don't normally talk about casually.
Yeah, it's like you want it to feel somewhere between medical and derogatory. Like you want the comfortable median where it's just conversational between friends, educating each other and sharing what you've learned, what you've researched, and what you've tried.
Right, right. Which oddly is a hard thing for guys to do around sex.
Interesting. It
Yeah, I
usually
think
comes from a braggadocious place, like locker room banter. This is my perception, obviously not
yeah.
being male.
Well, it's either that or it's just not really talking about it at all. So
Makes total sense.
yeah, I find that a lot of guys just really don't want to talk about any details of it with other guys. I think that there's a certain kind of competitive insecurity that comes with it, almost like talking about salary or something, where even if you're trying to talk about it neutral to guys, on some level, they're afraid that they're going to seem less macho if they have any insecurities around it, or if they're trying to improve some part of it, and they just don't want to bring it up, right? So, but they're clearly interested because there's so many of them reading these articles and buying products and trying to bridge that gap between like, okay, we know you're interested in this. Let's just talk about it like normal human beings and try to get over
Yeah.
that cognitive dissonance. That was a big goal and challenge with it too.
So, what do you feel like is the most surprising thing that someone who picks up the book might learn?
Ooh, most surprising thing. Well, I think surprising and maybe exciting would be a lot of the non-tantric multiple orgasm stuff for men, because that's an area that pretty much any guy is going to be interested in, where it.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly. When you tell a guy like, hey, by the way, you can orgasm without ejaculating, they kind of can't process that information right away.
Yeah, it goes
And
against everything they've learned growing up and what they've probably learned about their own bodies.
yeah, exactly. And it's something that even if they do have some awareness of it, probably the only way they've heard of it is through this, very ancient practice called tantric sex, which, it's kind of like Eastern religious, like a way to approach nirvana through human sexuality. And the techniques are actually pretty much spot on, but they're hidden in all of this mysticism that it's really hard to digest as a secular person.
Yeah.
So you can pick up one of those texts and start reading through it, and you immediately just go, okay, no, this is absurd. I can't take the rest of it seriously because there's all of this stuff about, unlocking my chakras and things like that.
Yeah,
So
which might not resonate with the average person.
exactly. And being able to talk about that and show guys how they can approach it without needing any of that extra stuff and just know, like, here's the actual mechanics of how to do it. That is what I've heard the most from people as being kind of like whoa, I had no idea that I could do that, or that I could actually like work on it with my partner and this could become part of our sex life.
Yeah.
So
And have you had people reach out since reading the book and tell you certain things that they've implemented or tried or
I get the weirdest emails.
yeah, you must.
Yeah.
Can you share one? I mean, without sharing names, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I get a good number of them from people who either the most that I get feedback on is the lasting longer in bed stuff, because that's something that guys I think get the most insecurity around. And so they either read the article or buy the book or download the app or any of that, and they end up like actually making significant improvements in that area and feeling way more comfortable with their sexual partners. And that's been awesome to hear, just through email and Facebook messages and stuff like, hey, read this, implemented it, pretty much fixed that problem for me. Like, thank you so much. That's been really cool. There are a number of people actually on Reddit who share the lasting longer multiple orgasm stuff quite a lot. And we'll talk about within kind of like the sex communities on Reddit, they'll talk about implementing it. So they don't tell me directly, but I see them sharing it with other people, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, sharing your article.
Gone out and done this. Yeah.
Yeah. So just backtracking a second for anyone who's not familiar, you said they'll either read the article or download the app. Do you want to just share what you mean when you say the app so our listeners are aware of that?
Yeah, well, that was actually also from the articles, was that, so for men, for lasting longer in bed and also for practicing some of this non-ejaculatory orgasm stuff, pretty much the most effective thing you can do to get yourself to the point where you can easily do either of those things is practice Kegel exercises or Kegel exercises. And traditionally, we think of them as something that mostly women do, right? So it increases vaginal tightness, it like helps with menstruation. There's like a lot of benefits for women. But for men, there's a number of benefits around like erectile strength, lasting longer, being able to maintain erections for longer, and actually having like longer orgasms too.
Can I tell you that I bet any woman listening right now just started practicing her Kegels? Because I did. Continue. But yeah, so sorry, now I made you blush. I'm sorry.
Yeah, now I'm like, well, no, I'm blushing because I was doing them too. So, but all of the apps around them on the App Store, because like you want to do them to a certain cadence, and it's like any muscle, right? So the longer you train it, the stronger it gets, the easier it gets to do them, and then you can hold and release the muscle for longer. Right. So for men, at least, the main way you do a Kegel is you basically flex the muscle effectively behind your penis that you would use to stop peeing. Right?
That's good. I'm glad you called out what it would normally be used for, because I feel like a lot of men listening would be like, I don't know how to access it.
Yeah. What is this thing?
Yeah.
I mean, if you've never flexed that muscle, it's the muscle that you use to stop peeing or the muscle that you use to make your dick bounce around when you're erect. Same muscle. So I find guys resonate with the second one more.
Yeah.
Like, yep, okay, I've done that.
Totally done that.
Totally done that, yeah.
As a female, totally requested that. We're getting real in this interview. I like it.
Yeah, no, I love it. This is a lot of fun.
Well, but the thing I wanted to call out was the fact that you have the Stamina app.
Well, we're still getting there. We're busy talking.
I'm so sorry.
We've got a plan.
Kegels first, Stamina
Kegels
second.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, if you practice Kegels, you can do that hold for longer and longer. That makes it easier to stop yourself ejaculating at the last second. It makes the muscle down there stronger. So there's plenty of apps for women for doing this for progressively longer times to make the muscle stronger and stronger. There wasn't a good one out there for men. And the reason that's a problem, the reason you don't want to use the same app, is that for men, there's actually a second exercise called reverse Kegels. So instead of just doing the flex motion, like the bounce motion, you can also do the reverse where you essentially push out with that muscle. And this one's weirder, harder to conceptualize, but it's kind of like, imagine trying to fart deliberately. And then for guys, trying to move that pressure, away from your ass and more towards like the back of your penis. And
so interesting.
Yeah, that sounds very strange, but that's actually probably
especially to someone who doesn't have a penis.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's actually probably the most effective thing you can do during sex, foreplay, everywhere, to keep yourself at a relatively even-keeled level of stimulation. So if you think of 1 as, completely flaccid, unaroused, 5, like you're hard and ready to go, but you're not close to orgasming, and then 10 is like ejaculation, right?
Yeah.
So if you can keep yourself in that, 6 to 7, 8 range, you can go for a while. And reverse Kegels are actually a really, really good way to bring yourself back down. But there was no app for training both regular Kegels and training reverse Kegels. So I just made one for helping guys do the timings and practice like making that muscle stronger and stronger. And that was, one, I was a user of it, which was cool. And then I had these guys messaging me from the articles and from finding the app being like, yo, thank you for actually making this and like helping me figure this stuff out. So it's been really cool to see that. it makes me feel good to know that there's people benefiting from it like that.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll have a link to the app in the show notes.
Okay, great.
So anyone who wants to check it out can do that.
Don't
So
buy the ripoff
what's
app.
that?
Somebody cloned the app and skinned it and made their own much uglier like knockoff version that doesn't even have the other timings. It's very silly. So
Imitation is the greatest form of flattery.
I was pissed when I saw it for about 10 minutes, and then I decided that it was kind of cool. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll have the link to the correct one for sure. So I'm wondering, how has your life changed, if at all, since publishing on a book on such a taboo topic? What some people would consider to be a taboo topic.
yeah, in some ways it's kind of nice because I really can't be embarrassed about anything anymore.
Yes, so freeing.
Right? I like literally nothing is off limits in terms of conversation now. And I've also found that it's kind of freeing for some of my friends that I talk to too. Because like we said at the beginning, guys are weird about talking about sex and intimate details and stuff. But now a lot of my friends, even less close, kind of like loose ties, will message me and ask about stuff. And I feel like it kind of opened the door to having those conversations.
Yeah.
And especially when guys are drunk, they're way more willing to like talk about it and ask. And it's always kind of funny and surprising how many of my guy friends have read this stuff and just haven't told me.
Yeah.
But it's been nice to like not be insecure talking about those things at all, and to like kind of try to be a resource for people who are curious about that.
I think that's awesome. I mean, sex is such a sensitive, incredible, personal, and yet universal topic,
Yeah.
that if you can improve someone's sex life, like you're improving their life, their whole life.
Well, and like confidence stuff too.
Yeah,
For a lot
sure.
of guys, so much insecurity, even around dating and other parts of life, come from insecurities around sex. And this was one thing that I noticed. One in my life, and also in some friends' lives, the inability to communicate openly about sex in a relationship hurt the relationship.
Yeah.
But once you could just be really comfortable and straightforward about, what I like, what I don't like, what I'm curious in trying, how can we like make this better for each other, it improves the relationship as a whole. It doesn't just improve the sex life. It kind of bridges that gap where now you're comfortable talking about anything.
Because communication breeds intimacy
Yeah.
when done well. And ultimately, like, that's the goal with sex.
Oh, yeah.
Inside of a relationship is to create more intimacy.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. So is this something that you think you're going to pursue giving talks on and sort of becoming like a thought leader on?
I'm totally open to doing it if people want me to come give talks, talk about things, kind of like we're doing now, right?
Yeah.
It's fun and I like talking about it.
Yeah,
but
so fun.
At the same time, I think that the trap a lot of people fall into with a topic like this is that they keep trying to go and create more content, more material, everything around it. And I feel like I've kind of achieved my goal in terms of the content for it, where I've tackled the main parts of it that I really wanted to. I've got the book out there. I've got the articles. Pretty much everything that I wanted to do with it is there, and I feel like I've covered it to the extent that I wanted to. So I'm totally down to keep talking about the pieces of it that I've done. But at the same time, I'm also ready to like move on to new topics too.
That's so interesting. I love hearing that because I think that in this industry, this sort of thought leadership industry that you and I are both a part of, people do try and become like the sex expert or whatever. And then that's what they're known for. And that's what they somehow have committed themselves to for the next 5 years. And so, yeah, it can kind of drain them of their original why for even broaching that topic, because they've kind of lost the inspiration and they're done with what their original intent was.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of like put out there what you intended and continue to add value in that way, but put it to bed, pun intended, at the same time, then more power to you.
Yeah. And I think it runs the risk of leading to bad content and bad material.
Yeah, totally.
You take a magazine like Men's Health or Cosmo, and the reason that all of their articles around sex and relationships and stuff are so bad is that they have to publish new stuff every month. So if Cosmo was creating stuff in your best interest, they would have one page on their site that said, here are the 120 like best sex positions. We rated all of them, categorized all of them. Here they all are. Here's all of them you should try. And then they would never write about lists of sex positions again.
Yeah.
But that's not how you sell magazines, right? So they need to do like, 23 to try tonight and like 7 that'll blow his mind. And, now you're like dangling a toaster over the bathtub and doing all this crazy stuff because they ran out of ideas, right? I don't want to get stuck doing that.
Yeah.
So,
I hope that's not one that they're suggesting.
yeah, I never know with them.
I want to know if you could speak to any one person, dead or alive, about this topic, who would it be?
Definitely Nina Hartley.
Okay. Who's
So
that?
she's alive. She's a really famous porn star, sex activist. She was originally in adult films, and now she's moved on to a lot more just like education, empowerment, talking about sex. She was actually when I first kind of got interested in this whole topic.
Yeah.
Because she has an amazing video that everyone should go watch called Nina Hartley Teaches You How to Eat Pussy. I think that's the title of the video.
Is this a video they can get on YouTube, or do they need a special subscription?
You don't need a special subscription. You can find it. I think it's on X videos or something, but and you don't have to link to this one if you don't want.
I was going to say, I may not link to this from my site.
But anyway, it's probably the best demonstration video for men on like really good oral sex. And it's also probably one of the only good ones out there. And that was one of the things when I saw it where it was like, okay, this is fun and erotic, but it's also highly informative. And that video, I found that video probably 4 or 5 years ago, and it still gets shared really regularly because it's the best thing out there in terms of like video content on that goal. And
do you feel like men are like actively searching for this information, whether, under the covers or out in the open with their friends? Like, do you think more people are looking for this than I might be aware of?
I mean, based on the traffic that I've seen to some of my articles, it does seem like there's way more people searching for it than you would expect. Because I was just blown away by the number of people who were looking for a lot of these topics and finding them and reading them.
Yeah.
And if you spend a good amount of time on Reddit in their sex communities, in their men's communities, you'll see a lot more of that openness to discussing these things in ways that you won't see in actual face-to-face conversation.
Yeah, the anonymity.
Exactly, yeah. I will say, though, that I think guys tend to fall into one of two categories. And this is something that Matt Hunter from Cambio pointed out to me. And they basically run a blog that talks about like stories of sexuality that are much more vulnerable. It's a really good way for helping people be more comfortable with like stuff they're insecure about around sex.
Oh.
But like people kind of fall into just the very shallow end of sex, where it's like, some of the how do I last longer? How do I help a woman orgasm? Da, 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 da. And they just want like really quick answers to that. And then there's sort of the deep end where they're legitimately interested in developing those techniques and making it better for themselves and their partners and learning more about it and exploring and reading about it. Yeah. And that subset is obviously much smaller, but I think it's a good goal for some of this content to try to help move, especially more men, from the shallow goal-oriented end to the, no, this is almost a fun thing for me and my partner to work on together.
Yeah. Right. Do you personally, this is sort of off topic a little bit, but do you personally pursue any content around like the spiritual side of sex? Like, are you into David Data or anyone like that?
I do love some of David Data's stuff. I think that his descriptions around like balancing masculinity and femininity in a relationship and like some of that push and pull stuff is really, really compelling. And I guess I wouldn't say I'm interested in the spiritual side. I'm almost more interested in some of the pre-modern side to it. Okay. Because I think that, on the one hand, there is, an extremely legitimate and, should be this push for like total equality between men and women, right? But in sexuality, obviously, there's going to be differences.
Yeah, you have to have the polarity.
Exactly. You need some of that polarity. And I think that there is, incredible like erotic joy and excitement that comes from some people just like being very submissive and surrendering themselves to, what the other person is doing. And all of that side of how there's this kind of like these underlying desires that we have to kind of ignore during actual day-to-day life, but then we get to release them with this person, right? I think that's one of the really interesting parts of how like sex can interplay. And I guess you would call it the spiritual side or the like innately human side. That I find kind of fascinating. And I think that's where some of the kink and BDSM stuff comes in too, where it's almost like a form of acceptance with another person.
Interesting.
Right.
I found that it wasn't until I started exploring the spiritual side to sex or seeking spirituality through sex. Not even that I'm necessarily doing that, but once I started reading about the topic, I became more exposed to the energy that can be shared during sex. And like, I mean, without getting into too much detail, it was like, I would say most of my life I was focused on the goals of the act and the actual like literal sensations on my body versus the energetic sensations going between us. And once I discovered that, it was like a whole different ball game, and it feels so much better on so many levels. And I'm wondering if you've written about that at all, or if that's part of the book that you want to talk about at all.
It's not something that I've written about or that I included in the book. I'm completely there with you, and that's something that I really experienced too, in terms of moving from this very just like goal-based activity to a much more of like connecting with this other, human being that you care deeply about. But at the same time, I wanted to be cognizant of not scaring guys off.
Yeah, totally. Because if you start talking about the energy,
I think it's something that people arrive at after some of my stuff.
Yeah,
right?
That makes sense.
Like,
which I think is what I'm saying. I sort of found it after I started focusing my attention more on different things during sex. Yeah.
Definitely. I think it's like, let's get guys thinking about it and talking about it and
Step
communicating
one.
with their partners. And because I think the communication is also key for a lot of this, like deep bonding that comes from sex too.
Yeah.
If you're not comfortable enough, saying anything about it, about what you like, dislike, checking in during, after, it's really hard to get to that level of intimacy.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of sad how many people miss out on that. Especially guys who think that they can't do it because it'll make them like emasculine, or that it's, womanly to talk about sex stuff, right? It's like a real shame. I don't know where that came from, but they're missing out. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. I know many women actually who not only have never orgasmed during sex, but have never orgasmed with a man, period. Yeah. And I think, in fact, I'm confident that so much of that comes from lack of communication with whoever their partners have been, because to be able to orgasm as a woman, you have to feel safe. And I'm sure the same goes for a man to a degree. But, I think that if there was more communication and openness, then their ability to reach orgasm would happen more easily.
Well, and they can also tell the guy what they like and dislike, right?
Yeah.
If the guy's not comfortable talking about it, then you're not going to be comfortable telling him, hey, do this motion, or, stay right there for a couple minutes, like all of that stuff, right?
And for women who don't know what they like, if they're not comfortable with the man, they're not going to feel safe enough to say, I don't know, can we explore? Can you be patient with me?
Yeah. Can you watch me get myself off and then try to emulate that, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, that's probably something that would help a lot of couples, but I mean, I think that a number of women would be intimidated bringing that up with their partners. I think a lot of guys might not react well to that, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Then they might feel emasculated or whatever.
The ego is sensitive.
Yeah. Guys are weird like that.
Yep. I wanted to know if there's anything you can recall that was cut from the book, simply because it may not have played well with where the direction was going, but that it was still interesting enough. You want to share it?
Ooh, there was a lot of stuff. I mean, I had a whole large section on boosting testosterone for men. I think that's another really big problem for a couple of things. One, I think that some of the polarity you talked about, where you want some of that strong masculine energy and some of the strong feminine energy. I don't think that, I will say that sometimes women have become less feminine in the desire to, rival men in the workforce, right?
For sure.
And that's not a bad thing in work. That's a good thing in work, I guess, if it's necessary, right? But losing the ability to do that in the bedroom is a shame, right? And for men, there's definitely been this retreat from masculinity to an extent where they're afraid of being, like traditionally masculine in the bedroom, like because they might see it as offensive, right? And part of that is definitely societal, but I think part of it too is just the testosterone levels have dropped so much. And I definitely had really low testosterone for a while. And then when I started thinking about it consciously and improving it, it actually changes how you think and behave. And that's kind of crazy because once you recognize that difference as a guy, and then you think about how many other guys haven't actually made that transition. And so they're still in this kind of, it's not like, I guess I would almost call it like a weak mental state.
Yeah.
Where they just don't have that like traditionally masculine drive, energy, all of that. And that's a real shame. And it's almost necessary for some of that polarity, right? And I think it definitely is necessary for the polarity.
Yeah.
And so I did have a big section in there about, okay, like here's what you need to do to increase your testosterone. But it was ultimately just kind of like too much, detracted from the really like sex focused part of it. So I'll probably post that as a blog article or something.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, because I think it's really useful information for men and something they should be doing, right? Because that's, it changes a lot. Like it improves your mood, you sleep better, you get in better shape, you have better sex, your orgasms are stronger. It's like across the board, an awesome thing for guys to do. But most aren't thinking about it, and they aren't thinking that it could be something that improves their sex life, even in these more subtle ways where, if your testosterone's higher, you're going to be putting out more pheromones. That's going to make women more attracted to you. It's going to even make it easier for them to orgasm during sex.
Yeah.
Right? Like, then it will also, it can make women wetter during sex. It's kind of crazy, some of the like more subtle biomechanical stuff. So,
I love that the volume of your voice dropped a little bit when you said wetter.
I forget that we're not in public, right?
Yeah. This is a safe space.
I'm used to talking about this stuff in bars and public areas and then realizing that we're in a restaurant and I've just been loudly expounding on prostate orgasms and that other tables are looking at us. So
you learn to censor the right words when you're in public. Just drop it out.
especially when I'm around my family and stuff.
Yep. So I noticed that at the end of the book you have bonus material as well. So I'm assuming that was like interesting content that didn't necessarily fit into chapters, but it was still relevant. So I wanted to know, can you tell us what is the deal with penis size?
Yeah, well, that was, man, first off, when I initially sent out copies to readers, when it was like in its really early outline draft stage, one feedback that I got from maybe a quarter of the guys on my list who read it is they said, oh, well, you didn't cover how to increase penis size. And I was just blown away that there's a good number of people who think that that's a thing, right?
Increasing your penis size. Yeah,
that you can actually like use these magical herbs and stuff to increase it, right? Because it is a source of insecurity for guys.
Yeah.
And I mean, the first thing is you can't go based off of porn. They're selecting men who are in the top 1% for size and girth and all of that. And if you try to compare to them, you're obviously going to be unhappy. There's, one thing I would recommend all men do at some point is there's a subreddit called, what is it? I think it's like normal penises or average penises. And it's basically porn and pictures of guys with average sized penises. And that will recalibrate how you think about this a lot better. Because then you can actually say like, oh, okay, right? Like, I'm normal, right? Or above normal or whatever, right? And that's the first thing that I think guys need to do is just like get better images in your head of what's actually reasonable.
Are there normal bodied women in these as well?
I don't think that's the focus, but there are sections for that too.
Okay, because I was going to say
that's another good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, if men are looking for what they see in porn in real life, they're not going to find it.
They're going to be
at the Starbucks or the gym or whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, first off, like the sample that you have in your mind is totally whack. And then second, I think that it's, above, like outside of a certain range, or within a certain range, it doesn't really make a difference. So it's sort of anything in that, I guess it's like 4.5 to 6 inch range. It's like effectively the same in terms of like satisfaction, because so much more of it at that point is going to be positioning and all of the other aspects to it, like some of that connection level, right?
Yeah.
Being vocal, being confident, knowing what you're doing. But, if a woman's going to orgasm during penetration, it's very rarely going to be from the in and out thrusting motion.
Correct.
Where length would like be a big factor. Like in most cases, she's going to be grinding her clit against you in some way. And
or she's angling you in such a way that you're hitting her G-spot, in which case length doesn't matter at all.
Exactly, because that's only a few inches in.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not going to be that big of a concern for her orgasming. A lot of it just comes down to guys feeling like it's some barometer of their manliness. And I will say that if you're in the lower like 10%, then it's understandable to kind of be concerned about it. But it's something like 60% of guys are like wish they had a longer penis, right? And it's like completely unnecessary. It's not going to affect like sexual performance nearly as much as your ability to give like really good and patient oral, your ability to like maneuver your partner into positions where she can more easily orgasm, your ability to like communicate during and after sex, like connect really well throughout it, being vocal, holding her in other ways, like making it fun. All of that is going to be way more important than an extra 1/2 inch.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And I mean, even if you really do want to add stuff, like there are sex toys that you can put on that make it bigger, and you can always use a cock ring, which will make it swell a little bit, help some, but it's the wrong thing to focus on, I think.
What about girth? Are more men concerned about length than girth?
As far as it seems like they are more concerned about length, but girth is arguably like a more useful.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
Because like no woman wants to just have sex with a guy who's like 7 inches long and then yay around, right?
You can't see my face.
Just like getting stabbed in the cervix.
Oh God! Ouch.
I mean, cringe. And stuff like cock rings are even better for like increasing girth because it retains some of the blood, so the whole thing swells.
Yeah.
You don't want to go on for too long. You'll start to look black and blue, and that's not attractive or safe. But that's pretty much.
You don't want it to fall off.
Yeah, you don't want it to fall off. That would be really awkward end to a night. But yeah, I mean, I think that the reason I ended up putting it in the bonus material was it was right in the beginning. There was like this whole section on breaking down some of these myths and concerns. And ultimately, it just made the flow kind of awkward, made the beginning of the book not as exciting to get started in. So, but I still wanted to include it in the bonus material because I know it's something guys think about.
Yeah.
And are curious about.
Yeah. So you want to make them feel like you get them.
Yeah. And I just also, I want them to know that like they're normal. Yeah. And if you are focused on your length and girth and you ignore everything else, it's not going to do you any good. So it's also just to point out that even if you're small, like you just kind of have to accept that and focus on these other things because,
be resourceful.
Yeah, be resourceful. Be like, all right, well, okay, so I don't have that, but I can be really amazing at oral and this other stuff, right? And that's great too.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't think a woman's going to fault you for that. So.
No, I've never hated on a guy for good oral.
Exactly.
So before we wrap up, I want to make sure that everyone knows where they can go to access the book.
Oh, yeah. So Amazon's going to be easiest. I'm running into issues with some of the other distributors. It turns out that some bookstores don't like having graphic depictions of erotic scenes in their books. So
good to know.
Yeah. In case you were planning on including that in your book.
I was going to say, as I write my book, I will be cognizant of that.
Yeah. The first version had diagrams and illustrations of all the positions and stuff. I had to take all of them out.
Wow.
Really.
Are you including those on your website as like a bonus? People can opt in and go get them?
They don't even have to opt in. They can just go and download them.
Wow. That's nice.
So, yeah, because that was really frustrating. When I first released the book, Amazon basically said, no, this is porn. We can't show it in search results. We're going to no-index it from Google. So the only way people could find it was by getting linked to it from my site, right? And that's no good.
No.
So,
Did
Yeah,
you draw the diagrams or did you have an illustrator?
no. I hired an illustrator for it too.
That's awesome.
So, well, yeah, I mean, it was awesome to get the illustrations. It wasn't awesome to have to take them all out because
Yes.
they did make it way better. But yeah, so best place to find it would be on Amazon. You can just search "Come Again," or you can just go to Google and search "Come Again" book. You'll find it.
What if you released another version of the book down the line that was just in certain stores? You know, like the extended version.
Depending
Pun
on
intended.
depending on when this podcast comes out, they may be able to get the uncensored version through my site.
Okay.
So, because I still have all the files for that, obviously, and I would love for people to get the authentic version of it. I just need to find a good way to get it to them if they want the physical version. But
Gotcha.
I'm planning on putting that up so that people can get it because I do think it's the more authentic version. So
Yeah. Amazing.
And
Well, go ahead.
oh no, I was just going to say I think if I do a second edition with a more traditional publisher too, then they might be able to pull some strings and get some of the images back in. I think it's more that because I was coming at it from an indie angle, you have no negotiating power. So
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, I've had you on the show before, so I've already asked you my typical end of interview questions. And so I wanted to end with something a little bit different today. Now that you have published the book, what is another big goal for you in 2017?
Oh, so when I talked about feeling like I've done a good job with the sex stuff and I'm looking at new projects now, it's actually around helping college students who recognize the process is broken and how they can pursue opportunities and life beyond feeling stuck in like the traditional college route.
I love that, obviously.
Yeah, because like when I was in college, I was really depressed for quite a while because I hated lectures. I did, really poorly in a lecture-based learning environment. Really didn't feel like there were many other options and that I had to just like suck it up and do it. Ended up kind of burning my boats and just saying, okay, fuck it, I'll figure it out on my own. And it worked out, but I think there's a lot of students who are stuck. And I mean, depression is like pretty rampant in colleges.
Yeah,
and
I had it.
It's like this really overworked, miserable environment. And I think there's so many students who want to do something different than what college is prescribing, and they don't have good resources for it. So that's sort of the next big project that I'm spinning up.
I love that. Well, keep me posted. I'm happy to support that in any way that I can. And I'm so grateful for you and your book. Congratulations, Nat.
Of course, this is fun.
Again, the book is Come Again, What Men Should Know About Amazing Sex with Nat Eliason. Thanks so much, Nat.
Thanks again.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much to Nat for coming on the show again. I had so much fun having such a candid conversation about something that I think is really important and really helpful for people to live a better life. Next week, I'll have the author of her new book, How to Be Everything, a guide for those who still don't know what they want to be when they grow up. Miss Emily Wapnick will be joining me. Emily became well known after her TEDx talk about multi-potentialites went viral. Essentially, what this means is if you've ever felt like you don't have one passion or one purpose because you just like too many things, then this interview and Emily's new book are for you. So be sure to tune in next week, episode 54 with Emily Wapnick.